Yo, Live All Good podcast listeners. It's your latest episode of Move the Needle. In this month's episode, we talk to a healthcare provider who has been the pillar of a community since the 1940s. Stay tuned, you'll want to catch this. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back from that short break. We are here with another episode of Move the Needle. Co-host J.R. Ford, are you with me?
I am here, sir.
Nice. How's everything, man? Since we're into, oh my gosh, we're into fall months now.
We're coming into the fall.
I just
Things are
realized
good.
that. Yeah.
Things are good. Things are good. How about you?
Yeah, man, everything is good. School's back in session, and
Yep.
the heat of the summer is starting to die down a bit. So I'll take that.
Excellent.
And so I want to introduce our guest. We are talking to a healthcare provider. We are here with Heidi Fries, who is the owner and operator of Welcome Nursing Home in Oberlin, Ohio, my hometown. Heidi, how are you?
I'm great. It is a pleasure to be here with both of you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining
Definitely.
us today. So, here at Move the Needle, we have tackled a lot over the last year or so. Excuse me. A lot of it has been about social inequity, social justice, and a lot of it has had a racial component. Looks
Mhm.
what solutions look like, what awareness looks like, that kind of thing. We try to, but obviously we know that there are so many components to this system that is in place that we're trying to break through. Right there's a lot of systemic inequities that are
Mhm.
hampering our country. And so, as a healthcare provider, and I think that's fair, right? You would be
Yes,
considered a healthcare
absolutely.
provider.
Yep.
Okay. So, first of all, before we jump into anything related to the systemic issues, right?
Mhm.
Can you give us a history of Welcome Nursing Home and how I know about it, but our listeners don't. So,
Okay, certainly.
yeah.
So, back in the early 40s, my grandparents lived in Oberlin. They moved here from out of state. When my dad was actually born in Elyria and moved
Mhm.
to Oberlin to the house he lives in next door to me
Mm.
when he was 1 month old. And
Wow.
he's been there for 83 years now.
Mm.
Um, my grandparents, my grandfather worked in a factory, and my grandmother was just kind of a little bit of a socialite. But she was really ingenious and very much aware of social issues, and spent some time
Mhm.
bringing in people to their home to be a care provider
Mm.
for short-term stays. If someone was going out of town and they needed their mom cared for, my
Mhm.
grandma would bring them into their home here next door and care for them.
And
Um,
just to put in the context, you're talking in like the 40s and 50s.
yeah, this was probably 1940
Mm.
when she first started doing this. And my grandpa hated his factory job. So he
Mhm.
actually went to the local bank president and said, I want to start my own business. I've got to get out of factory work. I'm not
Mhm.
happy. I want to make a difference. So can you teach me banking and bookkeeping? So he would do private lessons with the local banker.
Wow.
And then he told my grandmother, his wife, he said, "Look, if we're going to care for people, we're going to do it right." So they bought a farmhouse on the south end of town, and
Wow.
they moved out there for a short time while they were renovating the farmhouse and converting it into bedrooms where they could bring the elderly there.
Mhm.
So for the first few years, they lived in the farmhouse, the Worcester farmstead, and took care of residents there. And then finally made enough money where they could hire someone to sleep there and be
Mhm.
there through the night so they could
Mhm.
move back across town to their house. And
Now, mind you,
then,
going across town
yeah,
well, it
right,
what 5, 10 minutes tops, but
right,
you don't necessarily
exactly.
want to spend all your time
Right.
away from your home.
And they had
Right.
2 young boys that were living in the
That's right.
house there
right.
as well. So they were able to move back across town, and that's really was kind of where the whole philosophy of our long-term care environment grew from there. And the farm just kind of, if you look from the south side of our building, you can still see the original farmhouse, which is now where we house our offices and our education area. But then little wings grew off, and as we could acquire property around the farm, we just expanded over time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That,
So then my dad took over in the 60s, married my mom. My mother's mom was one of my other grandmothers, head nurses, and that's how my parents met. They kind of, it was, Joy Wessel and Florence Browse kind of were the matchmakers there, and got my parents together. And my mom was a nurse, and she had gone away to California right after nursing school, and they didn't think she'd ever come back to town, but she came back for my uncle's high school graduation, and then they got my parents together. They got married and took over. So
and,
that's how it all happened.
and the rest is history.
The
Wow.
rest is history. So,
well, I want to take a moment, Heidi, and point out something that you said that I don't want our listeners, I don't want it to be lost on the listeners about your grandfather. So, you mentioned that he wanted to make a difference. And if you're going to make a difference, wanted to do it right.
Yep.
And again, like, it can't be understated. JR, right? I mean, we're talking in the 40s, 1940s.
Yeah, if you could expand upon, what you've, kind of experienced from, the generations of family who have been involved. Can you talk a little bit more about, what you've experienced over the decades of being involved in the healthcare community and with the evolution of the practice? Can you talk a little bit more about what your experience has been, towards that, and how you've come into your position in leadership? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So growing up as having my parents being the business owners in town, I really, it was sometimes uncomfortable. And, you're like, oh, your parents own Welcome Nursing Home, blah, blah, blah. And, it was like, I didn't think it was that big of a deal initially.
Yeah.
But the older I got, the more I recognized that, really my grandparents did, the story is unique to them. And it really is impressive because they went outside of their comfort zone to care for other people. And my dad always laughs and said that his Grandpa Henry got out of the business the minute the government got in the business. So when Medicare said, we're going to start funding you and we're going to start giving you regulations, my grandpa said, I don't want any part of that. So that transition really kind of the whole government impact in healthcare really is kind of the driver right now. And it certainly wasn't there initially. So initially it was really their choice was to do it because he wanted to make a difference. They wanted to care for people. They thought they were good at it, and they really were. And so they were like, we should make a business of this. So they were really entrepreneurs in back in the 40s, and they're one of I do think we might be the oldest facility, the Springer family. So there's 3 main families in Lorain County that started facilities very similarly and around the same time frame. The Springer family, the Wessel family, which is my family, and the Reedy family, which was more the Avon family. And so that generation took over, and then our 3 families are still involved, which is really unusual when you look globally at skilled nursing. There are very few family owned and operated facilities still in existence because when my grandpa had great insight, when the government came in and added layer after layer of regulatory reform.
Mhm.
We joke in the industry, but it's really not a joke. We are the second most heavily regulated industry, second only to nuclear power plants.
Wow.
I believe it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Believe it.
so that tells a little bit of the story of how much our business is driven by government expectations, funding expectations, how we get our money, why we get our money, why we don't get money. So
Right.
you know, they have a lot. It's really intertwined now.
Well, that's
So
even more. It's even more impressive. Again, for the listeners, I've known Heidi and her family all my life, so hearing the history at this point, also, and really the time frame, it, like I just have to say this again. We're talking before the civil rights bill.
Right.
Like
yeah.
before that was a constitutional thing. We're
Yeah.
talking about people, and I have to say that's probably one of the many good things about this small town of Oberlin where we come from. It's definitely been on the forefront of doing what's right because of what's right.
And
Not because yeah.
you're also talking about post depression as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
10 years or so,
That's yeah. People are
post
still so
depression.
like like
Yeah.
you're saying, post depression, just recovering from it.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
it's amazing. And I'm so happy and proud of you guys, Heidi, for not just saying, "Oh yeah, no, we're on to something different. We're
Yeah.
we're we're gonna do something different."
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and really, so I went to school. I mean, if you would have told me in high school, oh, you're going to come live in Oberlin and you're going to work at Welcome Nursing Home, I would have been the first person to tell you you were crazy. That is
True.
not going to happen. I'm
Mhm.
not going to live in Oberlin. I'm not going to run Welcome Nursing Home. I had no desire. And really, none of my sisters did leave, going off to college. It
Right.
certainly wasn't on our radar to come back and take over the business. It
Mhm.
really, I just didn't even consider that. So I went away to Wittenberg following in my oldest sister, Jill, she's the administrator I work with. She went
Mhm.
to Wittenberg and I was like, yeah, I kind of like it here. It was the only school I applied to, never even toured another school, which is kind of irresponsible on my part, but it worked out in my favor.
It worked out.
It did. They had a really cool, what they call a 3-2 program. And there's still a lot of universities that do this now, where you do 3 years of undergraduate and then your senior year, you start your graduate degree.
Right.
Oh,
And my parents had always said, we'll pay for 4 years of education. I'm like, well, how can I get my master's the quickest?
yeah, there you go.
A
There you
3-2
go.
program.
There you
There you
go.
go.
Yeah.
So I decided to get my degree in occupational therapy. I had watched the movie Regarding Henry with Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And there was an OT and a coda in that movie that really impacted
Wow.
Harrison Ford's life when he was shot and he
Yeah.
was rehabbing.
Mhm.
And I was just like, oh, that would be so cool. And actually, Megan, my younger sister, was the one that was like, this would be the coolest career. Then she realized you had to pass organic chemistry, and she's like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Oh,
Oh boy.
right,
So,
right.
Organic
Took a
chemistry.
pass.
Yeah.
yeah, that one almost did me in. But thanks to Dr. Sartoris at Wittenberg, he got me through it in order to get my degree. And I went off to St. Louis and
Yeah.
got my master's in occupational therapy.
Nice.
Really thought I was going to work in
Yeah.
pediatrics.
Mhm.
I've always loved children. I
I would say
love,
you went on the opposite end of pediatrics, but okay.
yes, I did. But I really thought,
Geriatrics.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I was going to do hippotherapy, which is working with horses and children, to
Right.
bridge
Yep.
them.
Mhm.
Yep.
And I really did not find my passion once I did several clinicals in that rotation. I just was like, yeah,
Mhm.
dealing
for
with
you.
kids with disabilities was not
Yeah.
my forte. And I
Yeah.
came back and worked at Metro Hospital for a while.
Mhm.
Absolutely loved it. Worked
Mhm.
on the burn unit, which was probably
Wow.
my favorite thing I did. there,
Oof.
spinal
That-
cord
That's
injury.
intense. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was
Yeah.
two very intense
Yeah.
departments. And then
Mhm.
they kept pulling me over to the stroke rehab, and I was like, this, I could do this.
Mhm. Mhm.
Then Metro, who is also, it's a government
Government
run
owned. Yeah.
hospital, government,
Absolutely.
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful trauma facility. But this was in the late 90s, early 2000s. And the government was like, we're slicing your budget.
Boy.
You're not making enough money. You've got to figure this out. And I was the low man on the
Wow.
totem pole. And so I was kind of freaking out. I was just getting married.
Mm.
And on my honeymoon, actually, my mom calls and says, "Hey, our occupational therapist just found out she's getting married and moving out of state. Do you want to come be the OT at Welcome?"
Wow.
I
No
know.
way.
Yeah. And I was like, I literally, up until that day, never even thought about coming to Welcome and working
Yeah.
at all. I did,
Wow.
and so I really thought hard about it because I loved working at Metro. But
Mhm.
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 Jill had just moved. She had gone through school, gotten her master's in gerontology because she just didn't know what she wanted to do. And her
Sure.
professor was like, what about getting a degree in gerontology and being a nursing home administrator? So she had worked for about 11 years down in Dayton, and then said, if I'm going to work this hard, I should
I
work this
might as
hard for
well.
our family.
That's right. I
Right.
might as well keep it in the family.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Nice.
she came up, and I was like, wow, that'd be kind of fun to work with my sister and my parents. So
Yeah.
I took the job. And
Wow.
right after that, we started doing some family transition discussions and planning.
Sure.
And the government was changing how you could be reimbursed if you did a family transition. So my parents were really kind of forced into retirement on a much quicker path than they had anticipated, in order to have that happen under the better reimbursement system.
Mhm.
So we only ended up working together for probably a year and a half, and
Wow.
then they
Wow.
retired at the end of 2001, really, so we took over in 2002.
Mhm.
And they fully retired. So
Wow.
that
Wow.
transition happened much quicker than any of us ever thought. I don't think my mom really ever intended to retire. My dad was
Yeah.
so good with it. He was like, fishing, I'm on my way.
So that kind of
Wow.
thrust you both into the kind of the operations and kind of the management of of the facility, right? That kind of just
Yes.
expedited your your transition and
Yes.
your yeah. So can you talk a
And
bit
these,
more about that? Yeah.
yeah. So the biggest challenge there lied with, these were people that had worked for my parents. I mean, our longevity of our staff, even to this day, is phenomenal.
Yeah.
They had people that had worked for them for 20, 25 years, 30 years. So, here these young whippersnappers come into Welcome, and all of a sudden Don and Theo retire.
Yeah.
And, I was looking back. I mean, at the time I was like, yeah, I got this. I was in my 20s.
Right. Right. Trying to figure out how am I going to manage staff that's my parents' age.
Right.
Yeah.
Double my age, double
Yeah.
my experience.
Right.
Yeah.
I had never managed people before. I mean, I was an occupational therapist. I was a clinician. I could do that. I knew that role, and I
Right.
was very good at it.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
then we were, faced with, my parents retiring. My sister was in charge. The ADON transitioned into the DON role, which my mom thought, she's like, I've prepared her for this her whole career. She was a great wingman, but she wasn't a leader like my mom. It was just
Right.
Sure.
the pressures were really great.
Yep.
And within the first 5 to 8 years, I mean, if you guys know the timeline,
Yeah.
in 2008,
Mhm. Yeah.
the market crashed.
I was just
Yeah.
gonna say it, the whole bubble and
And
yeah.
it was we were so naive. Jill and I are thinking, my gosh, aren't we glad we aren't involved in Wall
Ooh.
Street?
Oof.
This is
Yeah.
dodge the bullet. We're just in healthcare. Everybody
Right.
needs
Yeah.
us. Like, we're
Well,
fine.
Well, back then, did you know that 2020 was coming? Well,
No, I
what,
mean,
what,
that's a whole nother bag of
that's
Yeah,
a whole nother bullet
that's
that
like
no one
chapter
dodged.
two.
Right,
yeah.
right.
But
But
so,
Wow.
Heidi, I wanted to jump in and ask you this though. Um, so because you know what, since again with Move the Needle, we're not just about social or racial equality, right?
yeah.
You're touching on something that I think is rarely talked about. It's talked about in different industries in business now,
Mhm.
but this whole having to manage senior workers, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that experience a little bit more? Because a lot of times that senior workers are overlooked for whatever reason, right? Yet
Mhm.
they have the experience and knowledge that you need, but it seems as if they're overlooked because, oh well, they're not adaptable, or we have to pay them too much, or whatever the situation is. But that's also a construct that I would like to address. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah,
It-
when we stepped into those roles as young, younger people, and then now as I've, matured and certainly never even recognized that, aging nursing was
Mhm,
really going to be a problem, and that is kind of a crisis that has evolved over the last 5 years.
mm,
Our nurse population, our strong nurse foundation is aging out, and they are retiring and um, needing some work environment modifications. So we
mm,
have been really, because we're a single facility, we are blessed in the fact that we can make those modifications, you know, right now on a
mhm,
snap. We can say
Mm.
Judy can only work 4 hours. She can't do a full shift. So
sure,
we're gonna do a split shift. She's gonna just take 4 hours, and we're gonna
mhm.
make,
The-
Desiree a 12-hour shift,
right,
because,
right.
because we value the person and we're close enough to our employees that we know them,
Mm,
and we know, what their strengths and weaknesses are. And I think being a good manager is identifying
mm,
strengths and weaknesses and then applying, instead of, a lot of times you say, okay, well, these are your weaknesses, we need to work on those.
mhm,
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to look at somebody's strengths and say, let's just utilize this,
mhm.
Right.
and we're
Instead
going
of
to,
seeing the weaknesses, and if
yeah,
they don't improve enough for the bottom line, then they're let go. Yeah,
right. So
yeah.
Mm.
sometimes, we're in an environment where we're able to shift job responsibilities, or um, to really kind of meet the person where they're at, instead of
Right.
Mhm,
expecting somebody to improve, 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 and if you don't, you're out of here. Like, what
mhm,
Yeah.
can we do to make you successful? And if we can't give you those tools, maybe you need to look at this role instead. And,
mm,
and really,
yeah.
think outside of the box. And we've
Yeah.
had to do that a whole lot more in the last, well, certainly in the last year, but in the last 5 years, kind of
Mhm.
with the changing work demographic.
Oh
Wow.
um
yeah.
It sounds like, though, honestly, it sounds like that was already kind of ingrained in the fabric of Welcome. To be honest,
yeah, I
without
agree with that.
without it being taught. You know what I mean? It sounds like your grandparents kind of did that. Your parents did that, and you guys did that.
Yeah, i
Sounds like it's
i
ingrained.
it is, but I will say, so many, especially because we are a single facility,
Hmm.
corporations have lots of experiences to pull from. So a lot of my staff, really, we, are born and bred at Welcome. We raise them at Welcome. They start
Hmm.
as an activity assistant and then get interested in dietary, or then become an SDNA. So they're kind of mature through our
Hmm.
program, which is great in some
Awesome.
aspects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it can be limiting in the fact that we've always done it this, X, Y, and Z. So
Or it could also maybe give a false sense of, oh man, this is a great training program, or this is great how I've been able to grow. Then they get possibly to another facility with another opportunity, and
right.
are like, oh wait. this is not what I expected, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Wow. So Heidi and JR, if you guys don't mind, let's take a quick break. And Heidi, after the break, I want to dive into, a few more deeper things that play on racial components or,
Mhm.
maybe educational components, that kind of thing. And kind of ask you about some of those inequities that you may have seen throughout your experience so far. Sound
Okay.
good?
Sounds good.
All right. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. All right, folks. Welcome back from that short break. Wow, Heidi, that was a ton of important foundational history. Um, hearing just hearing how Welcome started, but hearing the history, it's just amazing, to hear that.
Yeah.
Um, I know that and again, folks, if you just if you're tuning in, or if you kind of fast forwarded through the first segment, like Welcome was started in the 40s, okay, and in our break we were kind of talking about that that was only 20 plus years before the Civil Rights Act, and I know I mentioned it in the first segment, but it just hits home differently when you keep saying it and you think about that. There were your grandparents were serving the community because there was a need for it, and there was something there was they were serving, but not because someone told them to, not because they were mandated to, but because they were trying to be of service of others, period.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just that amazing to know that that is a pillar of the community. um
It continues to be.
oh
Yeah.
my gosh, yeah, right,
Yeah.
yeah, it continued to be. Yeah, didn't mean to jinx it. But Heidi, so I wanted to ask, now going on to different racial components, since
Yes.
we've talked about different things on Move the Needle. Um, and healthcare is obviously a big. There's a huge gap, different racial inequalities that we all know about.
Mhm.
What has been your experience as far as Welcome Nursing Home itself, right? I'd like to know if you all have ever been accused of anything that was a racist policy, or very disingenuous at all, and if so, then how were you able to kind of rebound and become equitable, if that was ever such a thing?
Well, interestingly enough, like even growing up um in the halls of Welcome, cuz my my nursery pen was in my mom's office when I was a toddler. Um the
Uh,
people I looked up to often at Welcome Nursing Home were Black. And
Yeah.
my dad's right hand man was Sonny Bell, who
mhm.
was his maintenance director and knew the building inside and out. And if my car
Mm.
was, when I was 16, my car got stuck in the snow, I didn't call anybody in my family. I called Sonny.
And yep,
Yeah.
um,
yep.
so, and the Bell family, their whole family was
Mhm,
part of our family. Berta and Bertha and
mhm,
Ruby, they all worked with my family, um, caring for the residents as either nurses and dietary. I mean, they were in every department.
mhm.
Yeah.
So I never thought of it when I was younger.
Sure,
And
sure.
then I think the first time that anyone ever said anything to me was when I was probably in my late 20s,
Mhm,
Mm.
and Jill and I had just recently taken over,
mhm,
and the director of nursing was a white woman,
mhm,
and the ADON was a white woman, and we had just lost one of our supervisors who she was she was a Black RN, which,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
you know, even, I mean, I will say even now, I don't think we raise our nurses up high enough. But
Okay.
she was a great nurse, but she went back to the
Mm-hmm.
hospital. And
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
somebody, and I don't remember the context, but it got back to Jill and I that we don't have enough Black leadership on our
Mm.
team. And, it really hit home to me because I had always felt we were a very inclusive environment, and we certainly never made decisions, hiring decisions or promotional decisions based on color.
Sure.
But the fact that that perspective was
Mm-hmm.
even considered was a little hurtful. It was
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
hurtful to me,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure to Jill as well. And so I don't know that we've ever been accused of not promoting or being fair or having poor workplace
Mm-hmm.
practices, but
Mm-hmm.
certainly do recognize that there is a lack of educated, higher level Black individuals to pick from that even apply.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, so, one of the things that we have really spent a lot of time and energy with, both through the Oberlin schools and through Ohio Healthcare Association,
Mm-hmm.
is promoting scholarship opportunities.
Mm.
Wow.
And um, so, kind of for people that don't know healthcare very well,
Mm-hmm.
the direct caregiver is called an STNA, state
Okay.
tested nursing assistant, in Ohio only. I don't know why they picked that. Most
Mm-hmm.
every other state, it's called a CNA, which is a certified nursing assistant.
Oh, okay. I'll have to be different.
Ohio just
Got
had
it.
to be different, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so a lot of our people of color are STNAs, so the hands-on care people.
Sure.
Okay.
Then the next level up, if you want to call it a level up, is education wise, you would have to go to school to be an LPM, which is a licensed practical nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then the level up from that would be an RN, which is a registered nurse, and then a
Mm-hmm.
BSN, which is a Bachelor of Science in Nursing.
Okay.
And then there's now CNPs, which is a certified nurse practitioners. So
Yeah.
the great thing about healthcare and nursing as a profession is
Mm-hmm.
that really there are amazing systemic opportunities for growth.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah, it sounds like
And
each thing can lead to that next opportunity.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've done a lot of, we've done a lot of scholarship opportunities to encourage STNAs. We actually provide the STNA training right at Welcome. So we
Mm.
can
Oh
hire
wow.
someone as what we call an RA, which has no training. It's just a resident assistant, and they're not allowed to really touch the residents or anything, but they can
Sure.
pass ice water and take out the trash and just kind of
Mm-hmm.
alleviate some of the tedious work so that the
Right.
STNA really can spend more hands-on care with the person.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of, when you're in that role, you either get a passion for, like, oh my gosh, I want to do this, this is my passion, or you're
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And you'll
And we've
choose
seen
a
it go
different
both
profession.
ways.
Yeah. So I had a question. So
Yeah.
talking about that path, I mean, what have you seen in terms of some of your staff, navigating that path in, in the years that they've spent, with the organization? Can you talk a little bit about, your staff's kind of evolution, down that path, and kind
Yeah.
of, you talked about the scholarship. How many, or, can you talk about a little bit about, what your experience has been with the staff who have continued on, down that path?
Yes, we are. I'm actually, I pulled all this data together 2 years ago when I was applying for the Baldrige Gold Award
Mm,
through
yeah.
CM, through our American Healthcare Association.
Mhm.
And we had, I want to say, about 20 at the time. This is, now we're 2 years out. So COVID kind of, that's like, that year doesn't count in my book.
Put a pause. Yeah.
Right.
Put a pause
Yeah,
on things.
pause that.
Yeah.
We had about 20% of our nurses at the time had grown from some other position in our building, which
Oh, wow.
Oh,
to
wow.
me is awesome. They either
Yeah.
started in activities, they started
Yeah.
in some of them dietary, some of them in housekeeping, and then transitioned over. So about 20% of our team had grown in some fashion,
In-house.
Mm.
That's nice. Yeah.
which is great. I still think that there's room for improving that, but we have a large
Sure.
percentage of our staff right now that are going to school, our STNA population. We have, I would say, about 10 to 15% of them are continuing their educational journey with our local community college to earn their LPN degree. And some of them are already doing the LPN to RN journey. So
Oh, wow.
we are really blessed with that. The one great thing that the pandemic crisis gave us was
Mhm.
Yeah.
the government recognized that there was going to be a nursing shortage.
Oh, a
There
shortage.
already,
Mm.
yeah,
Ah,
there already
okay.
was.
Mhm.
And then when educational institutions to shut their doors, they're like, we have all of these people that were so close to be completing their education,
Mm.
Right.
you know, so they authorized a transition program to allow
Or to continue or
yeah,
to
students to
complete their
work.
program.
And yep,
Okay.
exactly. So
Well,
Okay.
that was a blessing in disguise, honestly.
and I
Yeah.
imagine it being a single facility that, like you talked about the flexibility before, you
Yeah,
probably have the flexibility in order to allow the either the STNAs or whoever's on your staff to work to that next level, and that's probably something that you want, I imagine, right? To
absolutely. uh
if you have people on your staff, they already
Yeah.
know what the culture is, they already know
yep,
what you do, so why wouldn't you invest in them, right?
Right.
exactly.
Mm.
And Molly is my HR director. She works really hard to accommodate school schedules and
Hmm.
clinical rotations,
No, I
and
can imagine.
we're a clinical rotation site
Oh,
for,
wow.
we've done that
For
for
Yeah.
Cleveland Clinic and JVS and LC3 and
wow.
EHOV. So we really try and foster
Hmm.
education both ways, because if you're a partner
That's
with these
awesome.
educational institutions, they
Hmm.
see what we're about. And then, when they have a student that's graduating and says, I don't really
Mm.
know what I want to do, they might say, hey, think about starting with Welcome. They have a great culture, because it's
Right.
about the culture first.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And that is so important. We have, you know, nursing homes, we're in a really great location, but
Hmm.
we are also, our biggest blessings are also our biggest challenges, because the hospital systems that are around us, we're surrounded by UH and Mercy and
Hmm.
Cleveland
Yeah.
Clinic. Some of the nation's top
Top hospitals, yeah.
hospital systems are right here,
Yeah.
and their reimbursement is so much greater than ours. They can afford to
Mm.
pay a much
Mm.
greater salary for the same
Mm.
Yeah.
caliber person.
Sure.
So
Right.
that can be a challenge for us. And we've
Yeah.
lost a lot of staff, especially through the COVID crisis, because hospitals are paying
Yeah.
the
Well,
most recent numbers I heard, $90 an hour
whoa.
for
Wow.
an RN. I mean, we can't even, I mean,
Wow.
Well, well,
close
hold
to
on.
that.
So where
Yeah.
do I sign up for one of the programs?
Right, exactly. You need to get your RN degree, Lee. That's
Yeah,
that's your next educational
my
journey.
absolutely, absolutely.
But that's
Um,
Wow.
hard. That's hard to compete with,
it
especially
is.
as a single facility. I
It's
mean,
impossible.
yeah. So, I mean, you talk about, the career path for, your staff. I mean, and the 20% who has utilized and leveraged, that pathway. Have you seen an increase over the last, 6 months or so, kind of, since we've come into the new year? Have you seen, a, moderate, increase or difference in, staff who have, continued on or have departed?
Yes, our turnover has definitely been greater in the last
Yeah.
6 months to a
Mm,
year than it
mm,
has
Yeah.
been in a long time.
Mm.
the blessing in all of that is I call them our welcome alumni, because I feel like once they've been at our facility and they live
Yeah.
our culture, wherever they go, they're going to take a piece of that with them.
Right.
And it
Yep.
eventually usually comes back to us in a positive way, whether it's a referral, if they're in the hospital
Mhm.
system and they say, hey, you need some skilled nursing rehab,
Mhm.
welcome is the place I would recommend you to go.
Mhm.
Or, you
That's
know, the
great.
grass isn't always greener over there either.
Yep.
They oftentimes will go to another facility that's similar to ours
Hmm.
with these much higher payment.
Mhm.
Towards Cleveland, the rates kind of increase
Mhm.
exponentially as you drive, down the highway east towards Cleveland.
Yep.
And but the expectations are a lot greater. Their staffing
Mm.
ratios are not as strong as ours. So,
Yeah.
a lot of them come back,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
so it is a blessing, and like that's a blessing in disguise, because
Yeah.
we've learned the hard way not to try and keep someone in the facility who wants to go. Let them
Sure.
Right.
go, embrace that. They helped us for a moment. And
Mhm.
Yep.
then they usually, there is a return favor in some way, shape, or form in the long run, because, they take our culture with them, and it's important.
Right.
So whether they impact another facility in a positive way because they saw a better way to do it,
Yeah.
that's okay. We're
That's what
good
I
with
was gonna
that.
say too. It also sounds like even if they weren't to come back, the culture that you foster and what you do at your facility, with the staff and for the residents, whoever has been part of that is gonna take it with them,
Yep.
and
And that's
Yeah.
that's
really our
that's
hope.
a beautiful, yeah, that's a beautiful part too.
Yeah.
As well.
That's an intangible that you can't
Absolutely.
produce. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
I love
fantastic.
hearing I loved hearing about like just the educational part and the scholarship part, and how you guys try to promote the from within as well.
Yeah.
You want your staff to do that. And I can imagine also, again, for anyone, if you haven't if you missed the first segment or didn't hear mine and Heidi's relationship, we've known each other our whole lives, and I can imagine how that hit for you, that perception that you didn't have enough black people in leadership positions,
Hmm.
or you weren't inclusive enough, because anybody who's listened to Move the Needle knows that I'm pushing for diversity and inclusion
Yes.
and equity, right? And I will not stop. That's part of my mission as a coach. Um, and Heidi, in some of our personal conversations, we've talked about that, about what an advocate is and what an ally is, and you are definitely an
Hmm.
Hmm.
ally. And so I can I can totally understand how that hit differently when it was you and your sister. That
Hmm.
again, not that there was anything concrete, but for any moment for someone to even feel that way or think
Right.
that, you know. But I applaud you, because then you did something about it. You see,
Yeah.
you didn't say, "Oh, it's not true. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing." It was something like, "Well, wait. If someone feels that way, we need to look inward and figure out, is this something that more people feel, or is there something that we should do and can do so that this is not a truth?" You know?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the coolest things that has happened in the last 5 years, we've had 3 administrators in training that have come through Welcome.
Nice.
And oh, actually, I'll say in the last 8 years, maybe it's been at least 8 years, we've had 4 of them, and 3 of them have been people of color. And that to me
Nice.
says a lot about our profession, and that we
Mhm.
are moving the needle in the right direction, because
Absolutely.
people are taking the opportunities and seeing that they can be the difference makers and in the
Right.
higher level positions. And so as a profession, I'm proud, because I feel like the recognition is there, the opportunities are there, and now it's our job as a community to
Mhm.
start aligning younger people to say, hey, this is
Yeah.
a really great path.
Yes,
There's a lot of
there's
opportunities.
something other than just being the you call it an RA, right? The resident
Yeah.
assistant, right?
Yes.
There is a path to a profession here.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
like, and I want to circle it all the way back, right? There is a path to be in service of others.
Mhm.
Like, that's what we're talking about here, right? This is that, like, I don't know, there's nothing more gratifying that I have found from coaching than being in service of others. I cannot tell you, like, the absolute joy that I've seen from, well, JR was part of my boot camp classes at one point.
Yeah. Yep.
But from the physical coaching I've done to the life coaching, I cannot tell you how much it is gratifying to see people just reach that new level. So,
Absolutely.
and that's what it sounds like, that's what you guys are doing too, right? Without the opportunity being given, no
Yeah.
one can even take the chance, you see.
Absolutely.
And you're
One of the
providing
best
an opportunity. Yeah.
the best programs that I've been a part of, through opportunity through Welcome, is through the Rotary, Oberlin Rotary Club. Rotary
Mhm.
International is an service organization, and they do a Strive program, which is students taking a renewed interest in the value of education. That's what
I
that's
love
what
it.
it stands for. And
Yeah.
what we do is we place business mentors in high
Mm.
schools to work with the seniors
Mhm.
in the lower 10% of the class. And then we try and figure out kind of what they're thinking about life, and
Sure.
Yeah.
What their
where their
interests
interests lie. And OP Miller
Yeah.
was one of my speakers once, Lee,
are.
a friend of ours, because
Yes.
this guy wanted to be
Yes.
in the music industry, and he wanted to
Yes.
be, he wanted to be in. So OP came and talked
Yes.
about, what life path do you need to take in order to be successful in the career you're thinking about. And does
Absolutely.
that include college? Does it include a trade school? Does it include, you know, and one of the
What's the
best
plan?
compliments
Mhm.
I ever got from one of my students was a young man that he was working at Walmart over the summer between his senior year, and he
Mhm.
said, he told my mom, actually, I didn't even know this. He said, "You're Miss Freeze's mom, aren't you?" And she said, "Yes." That's funny to hear you say that.
Right.
And he
Right.
said, "Thank her, because I never even thought,
Mm.
gave college a thought, because my grades weren't good, and I didn't think I was good enough, and that I didn't think anybody would look at me and say, you can do it." And she
Mhm.
did. And I'm
Oh,
working my
wow.
way through school now. And that, I agree with you, Lee. There's
Mm.
no better
Mm.
feeling than helping mentor
Mhm.
people to be a better version of themselves.
Oh my
Right.
gosh. Oh
And I
my
think
gosh.
we owe that to anybody that we work with, no matter
Sure.
what field or industry, is to help other people see the better version of themselves and strive for that.
That
Wow.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Go ahead,
seems
JR.
so
Yeah.
you've grown up in that environment your entire life. So
Mhm.
it sounds like it is truly embedded in virtually everything that you do, right?
Mhm.
From your career to, working even with your siblings. It seems as though that is, you found your calling, right?
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
Absolutely.
think so. I mean, we
Wow.
call it a welcome family because we really are
Yeah.
more than coworkers. It's a
Yeah.
family of people caring for our
Yeah.
family. Our residents are our family, and
Mhm.
it really is a culture. And I think in any industry, that's the first step towards inclusion
Yeah.
and diversity and opportunities. And
Yeah.
you have to have a good culture, and
Right.
and that's the foundation.
That's
I've
remarkable.
absolutely. I was gonna ask, Heidi, did you have any final thoughts that that you wanted to leave with our listeners with? But if you do, please expand. But you might have just dropped the mic right there.
Yeah, I think maybe I just did. I just A culture of
Oh.
inclusion is so important, and again, raising people up
Yeah.
is the biggest reward of being a leader, is seeing your team succeed and work towards a common mission. And we have to be better as a society to show people that there's positive paths towards successful careers. And I don't know that we've done a really great job of that, but there's room to be better. And I think with people like Lee and you, JR, having these conversations, it brings it to light, and hopefully will inspire other people to look around and see what can we do different as an industry or as a business
Mm-hmm.
to make it more enticing, make it more possible.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Just plant the seed. Start with planting the seed.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Plant the seed.
Wow. Heidi, thank you entirely so much for joining us on this episode of Move the Needle. Again, like I've known you my whole life and just found out new things. Greatly,
It's been a
greatly
pleasure,
appreciate
Heidi.
it.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
it's been a
you for
pleasure.
this opportunity and for the great work you guys are doing. I've really enjoyed listening to your podcasts, and now I'm excited to share it with other people. And it's we
Awesome.
all have work to do. So thank you for being the difference drivers.
Oh, much appreciated. Much appreciated.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, well, folks, you heard it there. That is a wrap on this episode. We thank Heidi Freeze for being on this month's episode of Move the Needle. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Google. You can also find us on Amazon now, along with some other platforms. All right, folks. Until next month, you will hear from me and JR again, and we greatly appreciate Heidi for being on this episode. Thank you.